The landlord promised me the apartment above mine had been empty for years. On my 5th night, someone started walking across the ceiling. The terrifying part wasn't the footsteps. It was that they stopped exactly above my bed. I moved into the apartment because it was cheap. The building was almost 50 years old. Old wallpaper, broken elevator, long, silent hallways. The landlord handed me the keys and smiled. "One more thing. If you hear noises upstairs, ignore them." I laughed. "Old buildings make noises." He looked at me for a few seconds, then quietly said, "Not these." For the first 4 nights, nothing happened. Then, at exactly 2:43 a.m., I woke up. Someone was walking upstairs, slow, heavy, 1 step every few seconds. It sounded like someone wearing heavy boots. The footsteps crossed the apartment, stopped, then started again. For almost 15 minutes. The next morning I asked my neighbor. She immediately shook her head. "Don't go upstairs." "Why?" "Because nobody lives there." According to the building records, apartment 4B had been sealed after a fire nearly 8 years earlier. No one had rented it since. That night, the footsteps returned, but this time, they stopped directly above my bedroom. Then, 3 slow knocks. Knock, 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 directly above my head. My phone vibrated. It was my security camera, motion detected, living room. I opened the app. Nothing. Empty room, just darkness. Then, the camera slowly tilted upward toward my bedroom door. Someone was standing there, not moving. The image was too dark to make out a face. I rushed out of my room. The hallway was empty. When I checked the recording again, the figure was gone. The next morning, I demanded the landlord unlock apartment 4B. He refused. After arguing for several minutes, he finally opened the door. The smell hit us first. Old wood, dust, mold. The apartment was completely empty. No furniture, no curtains, nothing, except fresh muddy footprints. They began in the middle of the living room. Not at the door, not at the window, just the middle of the room. The footprints walked across the apartment and stopped directly above my bedroom. There were no footprints leading back. I packed my bags that afternoon. Before leaving, I looked up one last time. The upstairs window was open. Someone was standing behind the dirty glass, watching me. I couldn't see their face, only a dark silhouette. I blinked. They were gone. Months later, I met the building's former maintenance worker. When I mentioned apartment 4B, he became completely silent. Then he asked, "Did you hear footsteps?" I nodded. He looked at the floor for a long moment before saying, "That's strange, because there isn't an apartment above yours. Your building only has 3 floors. Sometimes the place you're afraid of doesn't exist at all." For months, I blamed the noises in my apartment on rats. The police later proved there were no rats. I wished they had found something instead. I rented apartment 214 because it was cheap. The building was over 60 years old. The landlord warned me that the pipes were noisy. He smiled and said, "If you hear scratching inside the walls, ignore it." At the time, I thought he was joking. The first week was normal. Then, every night, at exactly 3:11 a.m., the scratching started. Not random, always. 3 slow scratches. Then silence. I called pest control. They searched every wall. No rats, no mice, nothing. The noises continued. One morning, I noticed my bedroom door was open. I always locked it before sleeping. I assumed I had forgotten. The next morning, the chair beside my desk had moved, just a few inches. Again, I blamed myself. Then, my toothpaste disappeared. The milk level in my refrigerator kept changing. One night, I counted every bottle of water before bed. There were 6. The next morning, there were 5. I lived completely alone. That's when I installed 3 security cameras. 1 in the kitchen, 1 in the hallway, 1 inside my bedroom. The first night, nothing happened. The second night, at exactly 3:11 a.m., every camera lost signal for exactly 34 seconds. When the recording returned, everything looked normal, except every kitchen cabinet was open, every single one. I called the police. They searched the apartment. Nothing. One officer laughed. Old electronics fail all the time. I almost believed him until the following night. This time, I stayed awake. At 3:10 a.m., the scratching started, closer than ever, directly behind my bed. Then, the wall moved. Not much, just enough to make the wallpaper ripple. I couldn't breathe. A narrow crack slowly appeared in the drywall from inside the darkness. A pale hand reached out, not grabbing me, not attacking, just feeling the air, like it was checking if anyone was awake. I stayed perfectly still. The hand slowly disappeared. The wall became silent again. I didn't move until sunrise. The police finally agreed to remove the wall. Behind it, they found an abandoned maintenance tunnel. Old blankets, empty food cans, candles. Someone had clearly lived there. Then one detective called me over. There was writing scratched into the concrete. Over and over and over again. The same sentence. "He looks at you when you sleep," I asked. "Who wrote that?" The detective didn't answer. He was staring at something behind me. I turned around. Nothing. When I looked back, he quietly asked, "Why is there fresh dust on your shoulders?" I froze. Dust was slowly falling from the ceiling, directly above my bed, as if someone had just crawled back into the wall. I moved out that same afternoon. 3 months later, the building was demolished. Workers claimed the maintenance tunnels were completely empty. No blankets, no food, no candles, nothing. Only one thing remained, scratched into the concrete wall, exactly where my bedroom used to be. "Don't come back." I never did. But sometimes, when my apartment is completely silent, I still wake up at 3:11 a.m. because I hear 3 slow scratches coming from inside the wall next to my bed. Some walls don't keep things out. They keep them hidden.